Good evening, everybody. I would like to announce that this business meeting of the Dayton Public Schools is now in session. Treasurer, may we have a roll call, please?
President Al-Hamdani.
President Al-Hamdani is absent and is excused.
Okay. Mr. Smith,
Present.
Ms. Reiner,
Present.
Mr. Sampson,
Present.
Ms. Wigani,
Present.
Dr. Pickett,
Present.
Dr. Harris.
Present.
6 present.
Thank you. May we now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you. To start off tonight, we'll have a special presentation from Ms. Sharon Goins. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, board members. Superintendent Lally, Vice President Will Smith, and the other board members. My name is Sharon Goins, and I'm the Director of Equity, and kind of giving you an update of where we are, where we've been a little bit, and where we're going. So I'm going to start with the definition I gave you earlier that has evolved, but equity is defined as a state of being fair, unbiased, and just. And in practice, equity, it means that each individual student receives what they need to be successful and to reach their full potential. But if we look at what real equity is, and this is a lot, but if we look at what real equity is, it is when educational policies, practices, interactions, and resources are representative of, constructed by, and responsive to all people such that each individual has access to participate in, make progress in high-quality learning experiences that empowers them towards self-determination and reduces disparities in outcomes, regardless of individual characteristics and cultural identities. And that comes as a result of our partnership with the Great Lakes Center and University of Indiana. And so that's kind of a more accurate academic definition of what equity is. And I just kind of want to recount where our equity journey began. So our focus was on implementing equity systemically and sustainably by examining structures and systems, culture and community, professional learning and professional growth, curriculum and instruction and learning, and examining equity gaps in achievement, in attendance, excellence, opportunity and disciplines, and all those are gaps, and examining equitable workforce policies and practices. So to do that, we gathered Journey. And again, I told you when I was here before, we were using a mixed methodology. And so these were the data points that we gathered to come up with some of our work. We conducted an equity audit, and it consisted of focus groups, and it had anecdotal evidence, and artifacts. Departments had to supply artifacts. This was to give us a baseline of where we are and what we need to do to move forward. We administered an equity and inclusion diagnostic survey, and we had a good sample, 2,968 respondents. That consisted of staff, parents, and students to kind of participate in that process. And also, we created an equity scorecard. So each school will have a platform and access to look at their own school or building data with an equity lens. So those are the major data points that we use to conduct this process. Some of the significant findings and recommendations were to expand professional development offerings related to cultural responsiveness, equity, and inclusion, which are all different things. Further evaluate significant disparities in state testing outcomes, especially as it relates to Black students, Hispanic students, and our ELL population. Examine the identification process of our gifted students. And it was really funny, I've been talking to Carolyn Mack about that whole process. And working with the curriculum coordinator to kind of look at some policies and look at some things as it relates to that. assist teachers in developing an equity mindset, because it's all about what they believe about kids and learning. This is, I mean, at the root of all of this is mindsets are what it's about, changing mindsets. Creating safe and inclusive school environments. How are our kids experiencing school? When they walk into a school, are they seen, are they heard, are they validated, are they valued? Is it good morning? Is it, I'm glad to see you? Is every day a new day with our kids? So these were some of the significant findings. Also, it said that we should conduct additional analysis on racial, socioeconomic disparities in achievement, attendance, opportunity, and discipline gaps. So each building will do that, and we have a process for them to do that, and that will also generate building priorities and building goals. Some of our accomplishments, one of the things, we're really proud of, we put together a Principals Institute with Dr. Muhammad Khalifa from Ohio State. Very powerful young man, and his whole work is about supporting and building capacity for principals. And so culturally responsive school leadership, he has done a lot of work on that. I also went out to Minnesota and was trained, and so we'll be having him come back. We had him in August, we'll have him come back in January and February for principals. District-wide PD, we've been doing culturally responsive instruction for teachers. We've had 2 sessions so far, I think very powerful with our partners, Dr. Neil Nady, Dr. McIntosh from UD, Dr. Cutler and Michael Carter from Sinclair. So they've been doing the actual training. Dr. Lally recommended when we had those pullouts that I do, the cultural responsive training for our clerical, SROs, custodians, and our cafeteria personnel. It was excellent. It was really powerful. It was really powerful because they're constants in some of the buildings. They're constants. They fill gaps in a lot of our buildings. They're, the big smiles sometimes. We also have established a 3-year professional development plan, and I can go into that a little bit more, but we lastly have created a comprehensive data collection system with the things I've mentioned before. I don't want to read all that to you. We're instituting a culturally responsive textbook adoption rubric that we've kind of roughly used. So we'll use that some more with curriculum and Chief Murdoch as they adopt their ELL textbook adoption process. We've activated an equity team. We've formed partnerships with local universities and community agencies, of course, Wright State, UD, Miami, Sinclair, and Montgomery County Learn to Earn. So the current equity projects that are kind of been ongoing and continue to go are the recommendation of the adoption of the equity analysis tool. So this tool is to kind of focus us and who benefits, who historically has not benefited from policies or practices in buildings, in classrooms, in HR, in curriculum, who has not benefited. So this tool takes us through a series of steps and questions to kind of focus us so that we're cognizant that everyone, should benefit from these new things we adopt. The creation of a district strategic plan and common language. We've been kind of threading the language in the professional development. The plan is still kind of ongoing. Develop and share components of what culturally responsive, exemplars are, what they look like, what are the components. And the way we'll do that is we'll use an equity walkthrough guide that I've found that's really, really powerful, that central office can use, teachers can use it with each other. It could be kind of like in instructional rounds, protocols, and revisit the structure and membership of our equity team. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that these folks have been part of it from last year to this year in helping me with this. Katrina Bailey, these are principals and assistant principals, Judy Spurlock, Principal OJ, Dr. Schultze, Brian Escart, and Megan Hoddle. They've been a part of my equity team. So want to revisit it, add some members, and do some more work. Some of our next steps will be to establish committees to collaborate with other departments, like, as I said, HR. What are we doing to recruit, retain teachers that are representative of our students and of color? Training staff on conducting equity walkthroughs, what those should look like. assisting buildings and conducting deep dives into their equity data. What's important to examine as we look at discipline, who gets suspended, who doesn't, what are the students' GPAs, graduation rates, high-stakes tests. The next to last is working with building leadership teams and examining that equity data. So we'll start a training in January, and I'll be a part of that with district BLTs to kind of go through this academic workbook to look at their data, and each, again, kind of talked about what those scorecards look like and those processes would be. Okay, so in conclusion, systemic change with the equity lens means taking an intentional disposition of seeing and uncovering invisible structures, policies, and behaviors that sustain unequal outcomes among subgroups, interrupting those rules that serve either implicitly or explicitly to perpetuate opportunity gaps for vulnerable students and communities. And that comes from the National Equity Project. So that's kind of an overview of kind of what I've been doing. Any questions? And thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I really want to appreciate you for giving us that update, and I really just want to see how far we can go with that, and I think there's a lot of work to do. Are there any questions from the board? I'll start off with Dr. Harris and then move down to Dr. Pickett.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Ms. Goins, for this presentation. I have a question about the equity audit. In those 2,968 responses.
The survey, that was the survey.
Yeah, the survey that you received. What, just give me 3 kind of highlights of what people said in terms of what the district is doing, and positive and negative.
Some of the things folks were concerned about were safe and equitable schools, training for teachers, and support for all students.
Thank you. Dr. Pickett?
Thank you, Mr. President, Vice President.
I mean, you know what supports look like for all students, I'm sorry. Not just differentiation, but kind of personalization of instruction.
The question that I have also involves the 2,968 people who, can you tell us a little bit more about the demographics? Were they teachers, parents, like what was the ratio?
I don't know the ratios. I could tell you, I mean, I have it upstairs. I don't know it off the top of my head. But there was a significant amount of teachers and students and parents that participated. I don't know the ratios off the top. It's been some months ago, but I can get that to you. I can send it to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Could you address who ran those focus groups and those surveys also? I think it's important to understand that Anita.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Anita Moore Consulting. She was amazing. You all, and I thank you all for participating. She ran the focus groups, and we did the surveys, and she also did the audit. But we did the surveys with what is the group? Hanover Research. I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Anita Moore.
It's kind of a three-pronged approach that you use to gather different data points. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Ms. Witt-Gagne?
Thank you, Ms. Goings, for this important work. I mean, this work is ongoing because the world is ever changing. So it's like we're going back to correct for change and then moving forward with changes that are happening at the same time. Around that, when you talk about culturally responsive training, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about instruction, meaning that we have a laser-like focus on where kids are. So we do assessments, which we have short cycle assessments. We look at where kids are and target our instruction to meet that particular student's need. And we also look at their cultural, and things should be reflective of who our students are. If it's our ELL population, it's our African-American population, if our girl population, our materials should be reflective of those demographics. And so we should embrace, versus seeing our students' culture or their situations as deficits, we should see them as assets, and how we build on those assets.
Perfect. And then along those lines too, when we, You know, I know a lot of this includes expanded professional development and, you know, school leadership training, that sort of thing. Does any of this work include like implicit bias training for any of our students?
Yes,
staff,
implicit
our
bias
community?
is a small portion of equity work. You know, you can't do it without the other stuff. Equity work is systemic, and so we look at the systems that have created these unequal outcomes. You know, I think we shortchange ourselves if we just kind of focus on implicit bias. It's really about belief systems. What do people believe about kids? What do they believe about learning? How do they change their practices to make students successful? If students are failing, what are they doing differently? What do they need to do differently? You know, if 25% of your students are not being successful, what do you need? What adjustments do you need to make? How do you need to, how we embrace culturally responsive instruction is about embracing families. I've been supporting the school as of late, and it's been really great. And one of the significant things, and I don't think I've seen this in my career, I've called 30 or 40 parents. I have met the most positive, amazing fathers. I have. And how do we build on that? That have come up to their school to get their kids together. And so how do we build on that? That's what culturally, you know, not to get them in trouble. Another piece of culturally responsive is when we look at discipline, is it about punishment or is it about changing behavior? And that's a philosophical piece that we have to examine. And I think sometimes we have used it as classroom management, we've used it as get back, we've used it as punishment. It cannot be that. We want to change behavior. Every day has to be a new day. So,
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
sure.
Any other questions? Board Member Reiner?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm really grateful to see it laid out. There's so much here that I think
There's
we
a
could
lot.
talk about
And I
for
went
a
through it
very, very
quickly.
long time. And I'm really grateful for this summary. I would like to do a deep dive into this. It occurs to me that there are probably lots of people here in the audience and then people who are watching who have lots of questions as well too. And I would like to discuss the maybe possibility of having an equity town hall for parents to ask
Absolutely.
questions and see, you know, looking through this slideshow, there are a number of things that we could focus on, whether it is the professional development or the equity analysis tool or the district equity strategic plan. So I would just love to be in communication and to put that on the plate for something that we can share with people so they can have the opportunity to discuss with you. The work that we do is important, but it's not done enough if we're not actually involving parents and community members in the conversation and making them part of the conversation and giving them the tools to understand what we're doing and to give us feedback and ask questions. So I would love to be able to discuss that in the future.
I would too.
Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I have a couple questions, please.
I know you did.
You know I had to. One, so when we talk about the equity team structure and you're talking about revisiting and looking and possibly adding, will that still consist of building leadership as far as principals and assistant principals? Or
And
when building that
teachers.
out, will it be teachers and stuff involved too?
Teachers, yeah, it would, but again, we were doing this partnership with the MAP Center.
Right.
The training was during the day. Class coverage is an issue. So I kind of relied on some principals who could kind of free themselves up. You know, when we were kind of down early during the pandemic, kind of was perfect timing that we could kind of meet during the day. Because these were like 4-hour sessions, 2 days a week. And so, you know, it just wasn't time, you know, the time didn't allow for me
Yes,
to
ma'am.
make it a more diverse, but I have tons of folks, teachers, central office folks, that will be willing to support the work, believe me.
Appreciate that. Also, when you talked about just looking at those invisible structures and policies and behaviors, did any of those kind of things come up throughout the survey and talking to people? Did people pinpoint any behaviors or policies that they saw as an equity barrier?
Yeah, they did. One of the things that comes to mind is that parents and teachers believe that they've had training, but do they talk about those kind of things in the classroom? And how do they talk about those kind of things in the classroom? How do we acknowledge difference? How do we have high expectations for our kids and hold them accountable? Those were some of the things that came up.
Appreciate that. And then on your next steps, it talks about establishing a community oversight committee. What do you envision kind of that committee looking like?
The one I talked about, it's kind of an
Okay.
internal central office, HR. I've talked to some folks in HR, I've talked to some folks in curriculum, and so that's kind of the structure.
Okay, and then lastly, if you could expound on what you mean, because I think I follow it, if it is what I'm thinking, I love it, but every day is a new day. When you s-
As a former teacher, as a former assistant principal, as a former AP, every day is a new day. You know, you could have messed up horribly, but every day is good morning, I'm glad you're here. And you better be good. Every day. Anybody who knows me knows that.
Yes,
I know your
ma'am.
name, I know your grandmother, I know your grandfather. I probably went to school with, your uncle. I taught your dad, and I whipped out 2 cell phones. Who do you want me to call?
Yes, ma'am.
Get your life together. And they do. I mean, have done it forever.
I appreciate that. And then lastly, how can you see us as a board? What are some of the things that we can take steps to assist you in this equity work?
Let me think about that. I don't know. I think maybe you all could get trained in some equity work. And I could, have you all possibly be a part of some of the equity work with Dr. Khalifa. That would be really, really good, I think. I have some books that I could give all of you that we learned to earn purchase on leadership, culturally responsive leadership. I have some of those books that I could have for you all, and that could be a start. We could do a book study. But it's a process, and it's not about fixing kids. It is about broken systems that produce the results that they result. It's not about broken kids.
Yes,
So-
ma'am. So I definitely appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
I do. I wish I could have had you when we were in school, but
Everybody, you would have loved me.
but definitely I want to thank you for coming out, and I look forward to how we can keep this work moving. Excuse me.
Vice President.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
got one question. Mayor,
Yes, sir, Mr.
And we go
thank you,
back.
Mr. Vice President. Ms. Goins, thank you for this presentation. I
Yes.
do have a question. In one of the slides, it talked about real educational equity. And I know right now we're doing a lot of focusing on administration, adults, parents. Have we considered doing anything, bringing the students into a conversation about what they perceive as
A
educational
lot of the
equity?
research talks about, as we grow this piece, it was kind of, for me, getting through what are the data points? What are the priorities? But all equity work talks about having student voice. I mean, that's just good education.
Yes, ma'am.
That's just good education,
Okay.
student voice
Thank you
and
so much.
choice.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Well, once again, I'd like to thank you for the work you do and look forward to working with you in the future. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go on to the hearing of our bargaining units and of the public, I do want to make note of, we have 2 special people who will be soon joining us, Mr. Joe Lacey and Ms. Cassandra Goodwine. They were elected to the school board, so we'll look forward to it. Do we have any of our bargaining units here today? I see we do not. Treasurer, do we have any people signed up to speak?
Yes. First, Erica Gist.
As you come up, I'd just like to remind you to just give your name and address, and then you have your 3 minutes.
Great. My
If
name is
you're-
Erica Gist. I reside at 462 Liscum Drive. I am a DPS alumni. I stand on behalf of DPS parents. We have one voice. We want and expect results in the areas of student achievement and caring administrators and teachers who get high-performing results. We want and expect systematic changes that are lasting, accountability to employees, parents, students, and to the community as a whole, transparency in the areas of decision-making, funding, clarity in areas of communication, and the roles and responsibilities of the board members. Our request is for you to lead us in creating a culture where a superintendent will deliver results, where teachers are viewed and treated as experts, where students are held to high expectations to learn, and where parents are respected as partners. If there is to be change in student achievement, you must lead to change this current culture first. I work for the Detour Program, Inc. I am the CEO and founder. We do anti-bullying and suicide prevention work. I've had several parents within the past month reach out to me about their children being bullied and having suicidal ideations. My concern is that I reached out, I called the district, I've called every school. I've been told I would receive callbacks, I never received them back. I've been working closely with several different organizations and looking at the Ohio Revised Code. As you know, you guys are required to print these reports and have them on your website per the Ohio Revised Codes. Parents should be able to access the information, how many reports of bullying and what's being done about it. It's not visible on your website. When I look at West Carrollton, when I look at all the school districts further south, that information is provided. So I stand here today asking for that information. I will continue to show. I will continue to work with the different agencies just to hold you accountable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jamie Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to ask, well, you may have gotten an email earlier today. I don't know if you opened it up, but I'm going to reiterate what I wrote. I'm here tonight to ask that you give teachers and all district staff off on Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. I'm asking that you do this with no strings attached, no adding on of days at the end of the school year, or additional makeup days sprinkled in somewhere else. Currently, a teacher training at Sinclair is scheduled on Monday and Tuesday. This would need to be canceled, and the contracts associated with the training need to not be approved. I'm asking the board to remove the following contracts from the consent agenda tonight and not to approve them. And I think I have them right, but forgive me if I don't. Frank Crockett for $500, Sinclair Community College for roughly $2,795, and Sinclair Community College for $3,000. With regard to other district staff, I'm not sure what else will need to be canceled to ensure that everyone, teachers, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, custodial staff, nutrition services staff, administrators, and others, how can we ensure that they have the day off as well? I bring this before the board because our teachers and staff are tired and burnt out. As we know, they are leaving the profession. They all need time to take care of themselves so they can do their jobs well. I am asking that you make it possible for a district-wide break for everyone next week, Monday through Friday. Please do not approve the contracts for the teacher training. Please give teachers and staff a tangible sign that you value them and their well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela Bailey.
My name is Angela Bailey. I live at 348 Park Drive. Dr. Lawley, Madam President, Madam Treasurer, sorry. Mr. Vice President and elected board, thank you for the opportunity to advocate for the beloved teachers of this district. I am here this evening to ask you to consider giving all of our teachers and staff the extra Monday and Tuesday off for Thanksgiving break. I can't think of a better holiday to express to all of the remaining teachers and staff how thankful we are for each and every one of them. I have seen your plans for the verbal judo, and I appreciate that you are trying to equip our teachers how to best reach our students. I would ask that you reschedule this important training for another date. I would quote study after study of the science on trauma, healing, rest, positive environments, and a healthy work-life balance, but I only have 3 minutes. I will give you the benefit of believing that you are well-read and work on your own emotional intelligence, not only for your own personal benefit, but also to assist in your roles within DPS. The whole world has been traumatized by the last few years. Our DPS teachers and staff had the added stresses of some of the decisions you all made and that many of you have personally told me you regret from the last year. We cannot change the past, but we can make more of an effort to try and understand our DPS family. I listen to board meeting after board meeting and hear all the resignations. Even now, we have 8 additional and a list of many more to come that have resigned with the possibility of losing their license for resigning mid-year for a career that they probably once loved. I also hear the board ask why so many teachers are leaving the district. They are leaving because of an extremely toxic environment established here in our Dayton City schools. Some long before many of you were even here, but it has become exponentially worse in the last few years. We all witnessed the surrounding districts do better by their teachers and staff during a global pandemic. Our DPS family survived not only the uncertainty, all of us did, but with the added stresses of rifts, micromanagement that insisted that they put their own health and the health of their families in danger, as well as an unnecessary extended break and the loss of summer plans, traditions, much needed rest and relaxation, and that has proven almost impossible to rebound from, as we see evident in our students' test scores and overall lacking of emotional well-being, compounded by some of the worst communication and utter lack of transparency I have ever witnessed from leadership. Now we see district after district
That's your 3
acknowledging,
minutes, Ms. Bailey.
teachers, we love you and we support you.
Thank you.
Ken Hayes.
Is anybody out there? I don't think Mr. Hayes is here, Treasurer.
Okay. Ronnie Tingle.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Ronnie Tingle. I live at 2080 Ravenwood Avenue, Dayton, Ohio, 45406. I am a DPS parent. I am here on behalf of DPS parents. We all have a voice. We need and we want and expect our results in our area for our students to our achievement. And I hate reading stuff to you guys up here because y'all are people. Someone already had read this to you. We basically just want the following. The systematic changes that were listed that will be lasting, not just for a few moments. Accountability for our employees, for yourselves, for our parents and our students, and our community as a whole. We want transparency in the decisions and the funding that is going to be used and is made for our students and our children and our families. The requests that have been made, I love to hear that we have someone that's going to do the equity. I would like to know what has been happening prior to Ms. Goings doing this. We need accountability. Our children need it. Our students are crying out. They come to sports for some of it, but a lot of our children are scared to play sports, so what else are we providing for them? I request these things here today, standing here is hard. Everybody knows that it's hard. The buses are not complete. I know that they fixed it for me, but they haven't fixed it for everyone. I have a grandfathered child, so next year I want to continue to have a problem. My daughter has been at Ruskin for 3 years, and now her 4th year she will not be able to go back there because she will not be bused there. The quadrants are unfair. They're unjust, and if it's not for color or our ethnicity, it's going to be for safety that these children are bused. We have to be bused. We can barely walk to the bus stop safely, let alone trying to walk to our neighborhood school. So I ask these things for you to consider, that every parent every person that is here in response to our children and you guys. I mean, we're here to support y'all. I would like to see a better partnership with the parents, not just in a survey, but to actually speak to us when we come to these meetings. So thank you so much for y'all time, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tingle.
Okay. That concludes tonight's hearing of the public.
Thank you, Treasurer. Next, we have a 48-hour rule waiver. Dr. Lally, if you can give us some background on some of this?
I'd recommend the waiver for the 48-hour rule to present the following items of human resources personnel that are listed there. And I will tell the board that this will be the last 48-hour rule that you'll receive on the day of a board meeting for personnel. Yes, please refresh your screens.
One moment. Okay, have all board members refreshed their screens? Okay. Is there a motion to accept the 48-hour rule waiver?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Witt Gagne and seconded by Board Member Reinert. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, Treasurer, may we have a vote, please?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris,
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you, Treasurer. Can we move to the consent agenda? Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Harris and seconded by Board Member Reinert. Are there any questions on the consent agenda?
Vice President.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Dr. Lally, if someone could tell me about number 45, I know the name changed from COVID project manager to project manager. If someone could tell me what that role consists of?
Yes, actually, we were hiring 2 different people for the position. One was going to be paid for by ESSER money, but then our project manager that works with Chief Hurwitz found another job and left the district. So I'll ask him to come up and tell him what those responsibilities will be. So now it's basically putting that person in the position that was vacated instead of having an ESSER project manager at this point. So, Chief Hurwitz, could you come up?
Thank you. So the project manager's role will be managing all of the projects in the district. Many of the capital projects, the building automation systems, may be involved in the athletic renovations. So any of the larger scale projects that we need somebody specific with a skill set on the construction side, that's what this position will entail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along the lines of that, I do want to bring up, and I don't know if it's for, I guess it would be for HR, Dr. Lally. Where are we at now with this high number of resignations and retirements? How do we look like from a staff perspective right now?
Okay, I'll ask Chief Harmon to come forward.
Thank you, Board, for giving me the opportunity to give the update this month. I wanted to point out a couple things. If you've noticed in the 48-hour rule specifically, you'll see those items, and I thank Sharice for listing it as such. They're spelled out both under the 48-hour rule, but also in the HR agenda. You'll note that they're in green. and it spells out really the exact changes, what that was. They're really all timing issues. It's, for example, if someone resigned after the agenda was created, or there's hiring when people have accepted their background check, or we've received their background check, et cetera, that we were able to get them in for the next beginning of a payroll period, which is the 22nd, rather than waiting until the following pay period. So it's all timing issues. But before I go into all of the items that I always give you the update on, I want to take just a second to reintroduce maybe to you all Stacy Maney. Stacy is, just to say hello, Stacy is our executive director, and Stacy served the district as a principal for many years, and so is back in that executive director role, and so I just wanted to point her out for joining us today. So to your question, Vice President Smith, a number of things. So there are, as I've shared with you a number of times with the Civil Services Board that we've been working with, there are 6, and again, you'll notice these on the agenda. There's specific language we used. There are temporary clerical positions, and then there are district substitute clerical positions, and there is a distinction between those two. The temporary clerical positions there are 6 of them in the pipeline for the 10 currently vacant clerical positions. A temporary clerical is the collaboration we've done with the Civil Services Board to allow those folks to perform those duties for up to a total term of 6 months. If they pass their civil service exam, they would continue in that position and then also actually move up to, they're paid at step 1, level 1, even if they're performing the work of, let's say, a level 3. As soon as they pass the test, they are able to move to their proper pay rate. That is different than the district substitute clerical, which is paid at a lesser rate because they are not presently signed up to take the test. So the temporary position, they've already done, they've gotten signed up to take the test with Civil Services, so moving down the road towards actually being tested and approved through that process. We do have 7 new licensed teachers being hired this month, including 2 intervention specialists. We also have some December graduates and also some military relocations from out of state, which is why they're available to us. Wouldn't otherwise be coming at this point in time, but relocating due to military issues. Additionally, we have offered 1 teacher candidate for the upcoming 22-23 school year. And just to share that to you because we're trying to get ahead, begin that hiring process as well. We have formed a new partnership with the Glen at St. Joseph, which is bringing us in new paraprofessionals. If you are not familiar with that organization, the Glen at St. Joseph is a organization that provides support for single mothers, and they support those ladies with housing. There are requirements for drug testing, criminal background checks. In their requirements, they must be open to spiritual development. They're required to take financial literacy coursework with this organization. They have an educational requirement. They must be in school and in training. And this idea is to break that cycle of poverty. And we're pleased to announce that we're very much at the beginning of that, but it's already resulted in 3 additional staff, 1 being a licensed teacher who is coming on board with us. We are bringing the paraprofessional exam back in-house as, again, another means to streamline that process, whereas right now they have to do it outside of our organization, so there's a scheduling and a delay issue there that we're hoping to alleviate. I want to share that there is a job fair coming up on December 1st. Dr. Harris always asks about that, so the next job fair is on December 1st from 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the community room. And that is for all positions. We did just have a virtual job fair that was hosted on the 5th with Bowling Green, and that was for college students through the portal called Handshake, which you've approved a contract previously for Handshake, so I just wanted you to understand what that is. It's essentially a social networking opportunity for college students and connecting soon-to-be graduates to employers. So we've hosted that job fair with Bowling Green students. This has resulted in our offering for next year that I already told you about. There are additionally 3 additional teacher candidates that we did hire, that we interviewed out of that process. Those 3 were not selected, but it is good to get an opportunity to see candidates for the future. 10/28, we hosted, we connected with potential candidates from all over the nation in an HBCU specific event. We spoke with candidates from Arkansas, of course, Ohio, Kentucky, and this was also a future candidates, again, just trying to sow some initial seeds. These are graduates that won't graduate until at least 23, so just again, trying to get out in front of things a little bit. Now, specifically the numbers, we had 2 vacancies in ESSER positions as of last month. Those have now been filled again, so we're back to 0 ESSER positions currently vacant. We have a new intervention specialist position open at Fairview as we are opening a new unit there. So that is a new position. And of course, we're always looking to hire intervention specialists, and anytime we hire them, if there's a long-term sub in a spot, we will put the licensed intervention specialist back into that spot. There's 1 current fine arts position at Edison, although that is being filled by a licensed music teacher, but it's, sub position. We'll look to continue to fill that with a long-term position once the fine arts folks identify that candidate. We have filled a Spanish teacher position at Belmont. That's been open all year, which is a good move. We finally got that one filled. That's a good thing. And we did have an uptick in paraprofessionals vacancies this month. So there are currently 11 paraprofessional vacancies in the district, although, again, we've hired a number, so we've hired and lost people at the same time, so that number is moving both directions at the same time. Talked about clericals already. I think that is essentially the high points. Unless there are additional questions or specific questions you want to ask.
Are there any other questions while we have Chief Hartman?
I have questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President. I've got a couple of questions. Thank you for this report, Chief Hartman. This is one of the highlights of the meetings. I always look forward to seeing how the numbers are shifting and how we're doing, and I thank you for your work. My first question is about line 45 and 55. They are the same employee, and
Yep.
this is just not something that we see regularly.
Yes.
Can you just explain a little bit more? I think I know what I'm looking at, in that, we have this new hire and his salary, and then the other line is the business allowance. But can you just explain this a little bit more?
I appreciate the ask, and
Yes.
you did actually diagnose what's exactly correctly.
Yep.
It says Andrew Mastrino, who is getting a business allowance, a monthly, and that covers mileage and cell phone usage, et cetera, on behalf of the district. And then separately, his actual salary is listed. So it's essentially the same. You've diagnosed it correctly.
Good. How many employees, so this is, again, this is not seen very commonly on our
Correct.
HR agenda. How many employees have this sort of arrangement and contract with
The
DPS?
business allowance,
Yes.
it's a very small number. I don't want to say specific, but under
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
We have 6 that I can name right off the bat. They include people that are on the roads regularly. Chief Wright is one of those people, because he's 24/7, 365. Chief Hurwitz, the same, because of buildings and grounds. Executive Director Rick Rayford is also one of those. And I'm missing the Fleet Director, yes, the Transportation Director is also one of those. And then, are there 2 more, this new one? And then, who am I missing somebody, or did I overcount? 5?
The person who was in that position but just left us, and then so it's
Okay.
effectively the
So
same.
that's really it, and it only pays for, their extra wear and tear, business allowance, mileage, cell phone for use for the district, pretty
Right.
much. The rest of us pay our own cell phone bills.
Thank you.
And the other thing is that, when other district employees travel on behalf of the district, they can turn in mileage.
Yeah.
These folks don't turn in mileage. They just get a flat rate.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate it. The second, this is not a question, this is just a comment, is I'm grateful to see, every single one of these contracts has supplemental contracts for athletic coaching. I'm grateful to see how many are on there every single month. There's a great need that we can't always fill for coaches, and I'm grateful for that. My third question is about the Glenn St. Joseph partnership. It sounds like it's a really good partnership, and I'm grateful for an organization that supports people in a time of need. This is interesting, and I'm going to ask you a question. You might not have the answer for me right away, and you can get me the information as you can get it, and I would appreciate it. But how many organizations like that do we have a partnership with? Are they all religious? Are some of them secular? Religion plays a very important part in a lot of people's lives, but not everybody's, and I want to make sure, this is really great. I've never actually heard about a partnership like this with an organization like this, and I'm just a little bit curious about some of the partnerships that we do have that you work with to get some more employees.
I will definitely do some digging to get you a number, but you're certainly right that there are folks that work, groups that work with us that are both religious-based and also not.
Right.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Board Member Sampson, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Question for me is, what is, in line with Board Member Reiner's question, what qualifies an individual for the business allowance? Like, is there a criteria that must be met before we consider the allowance for cell phone, transportation? That's my first question.
Sure. I can't speak to that as deeply as Dr. Lally would, but it primarily would be that they drive a lot.
It's just an amount that's been in the district for a while. There were a lot of people before we changed the administrative salary structure that received a monthly allowance that was given to them, and we took that away whenever we changed to the new administrative salary schedule. I believe that was right before you were elected to the board. They were getting monthly stipends and not turning in travel and mileage. It was just an automatic. So we took that away, and to be transparent, they got their salary, but now they have to turn in their mileage so that they can be reimbursed for mileage, like anyone who travels. Teachers who travel, administrators who travel, anyone can turn in mileage if they so choose, but it's on an account, and we look at it on a monthly basis and approve it. So it was, I think it was like $350 a month is what they were receiving, and we just kept that $350 for those 5 people that are kind of different because they're out there all the time. They're the people that drive during the snow. They're the people that drive if an alarm is dropped. So they're constantly working out there.
And that is the correct number, you're right, 350.
All right. My second question is for Mr. Mastrino. How many, it was mentioned he was going to be overseeing capital projects. How many capital projects do we foresee him overseeing?
I would have to defer to Chief Hurwitz on that.
Chief, can you come up? One of the capital projects that is the upgrade of the BAS for sure, but I'll let you address that. And one of the reasons we wanted to hire a project manager was because of the Ludlow 2 situation, not being able to have a handle on everything with our own personnel. So the board talked about having a project manager. So that's what this is in response to. So I'll turn it to you.
Okay, so related to the capital projects, so we've been working, even before I started here at the district, there's several projects that are already ongoing. You know, we've been working with the asphalt, different projects. That person is going to be involved in a continuation of projects. If you want specifics, this person is going to be involved in some of Welcome Stadium, heavily involved in that, athletics. We'll have some involvement in building automation systems, but you know, we're planning for next year and all of these different projects. So that person is going to be involved in capital planning. I mean, they're going to run projects. If a playground needs installed and something just comes up, that person will be involved. So our operations team, everybody's going to kick in as needed because we run operations. But as a project manager, that person, we can give them any project.
And
if
that would
that's
include roofing projects, asphalt.
roofing,
All those
asphalt,
things are on our,
infrastructure,
Yeah,
yeah, LED
projected work.
lighting, anything.
All right, thank you. And then, Mr. Vice President, one more question, if I may?
Yes, sir, as many as you need.
This last one. Out of the, it's concerning to me to see out of 26 resignations, 25 of them are even before the end of this year. And I know I ask this question often about exit interviews. I know what we see as relates to personal reasons or whatever. Do you know if we've done exit interviews for all of these individuals who are resigning?
The answer is no, we have not for all,
Okay.
but I personally have conducted some this cycle as compared to last month, hearing you every month, had extensive phone calls actually with a small number of folks, definitely not all.
Okay. And I don't know if it's okay, but if you could share at some point, not in this forum.
Sure.
But what were some of the reasons that people are, and to see 8 teachers,
Yep.
it is concerning.
So I will continue to share those lists as I do each month with Dr. Lally and
I sent it to
yeah.
the board. I believe I sent the most recent one last week,
Okay.
maybe?
Yeah.
Was it last
I'll
week?
say the last one I sent was last week.
Yeah, the last one that was sent to me.
Thank you.
I did have a question to follow up with Board Member Sampson. With some of the feedback that comes back from talking to employees, moving past the exit interview, what are just then some of the helps? What are some of the assistance, some of the wellness pieces? What are some of those, or what are those things that are offered? What are some of the things that we are pushing to our staff? How are we assisting our staff that are in these positions?
I think we can always continue to work to provide additional training or supports from, as just an example, PSC coaches, for example, helping new teachers learn how to best manage their classrooms, as an example. There's a number of things that we share.
Yeah, definitely. Just like Board Member Sampson said, looking at these, I think that's definitely something that, as a district, like, what are we then doing to help people through a lot of these things? Also, if we may, on another note, and I think, well, before I get there, are there any other questions for Chief Harmon?
I do.
Board Member Wicknall-Yeh?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to know, and probably put you on the spot a little bit here. I know that, workforce everywhere is challenged, right?
Yes.
I know I have a business, and just when I think I have one hole patched, I have other ones popping up all
Yes,
over the
ma'am.
place, because it's seemingly, though, it's just part of where we are in our evolution of people. I think people are retiring because we've had space to make more changes. I think that, our younger kids are looking at contract work. There's a myriad of reasons why I think a lot of companies and organizations are finding these gaps. I wondered if, from a professional standpoint, from a district-to-district comparison, do you have any information as to how DPS looks in comparison to some of those other districts, and what our loss looks like comparatively?
I can't cite specifics. I can get some comparable data together and share with Dr. Lally to share to the board.
But as you are in the community and you're talking to people at job fairs
Sure.
and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
a lot of people are looking. People are looking everywhere.
For sure. It's no secret. You can watch the news and you hear a lot about the Great Resignation. There's approximately 5 million people have left their jobs in the last quarter in the United States. That's they weren't fired. They chose to leave. That's not in the education sector specifically.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions for Chief Harmon, I think you're good for now, Chief. I
Thank you, Board.
appreciate you answering those. I do have some more questions. Dr. Lally, if you could you kind of talk to the board about what are some of the contracts that we have on here, especially as it relates to professional development?
The contracts on the consent agenda related to professional development include Frank Crockett. He would be doing work with leadership and individual group problem solving, working with staff on that. And then, I'm trying to scan down, sorry, the next one. The Sinclair Community College contracts are so that we can host the verbal judo, which is a de-escalation training for staff members. We've had a large number of students that are not behaving the way that they are expected to, so we're trying to give the staff some skills. And one of the reasons that we're doing it this day, we changed everything because we only have 3 staff development days during the school year. We have one extra during, as school's beginning, but it's basically a come back to school, let's welcome you back kind of day. And then we have actual professional development training on November 3rd, and then the 2 days before Thanksgiving, as the calendar committee created those days for professional development. And then that's all that we actually have. So we changed the entire professional development plan that we had in place after we had a discipline conversation with the principals who were having quite a large number of students who were having difficulty following the rules and being structured again. And it was recommended that we try to have that training sooner rather than later. So we worked with the schools that really indicated that they needed something immediately for de-escalation for their staff. And then the others will receive their training, and they're mostly elementaries, 2 high schools and some elementary schools will receive their training next August, whenever we have that district professional development day on the calendar. So that's what the Sinclair College is for, is to pay for breakfast for that training session and to pay for the rental space on there as well. And are those the 2 that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions from the board on contracts? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Reiner.
Thank you, Vice President. If I may piggyback on something the superintendent just said, we had a in-depth discussion at policy meeting today that I'll be bringing up later, but it's about the need for de-escalation training for our staff at this moment. We're at a critical point. And I just kind of wanted to put a pin in that. We had to review some of our policy with the focus of being student safe, focusing on student safety and the needs of the students, because we are all traumatized. We're still continuing to live through trauma. And then my second question is on the contracts. We have a line item for John Carr for the auctioneer for the personal property auction contract at Gardendale at December 11th, 2021. Can I get some detail about that, please?
Yes, we actually have an auction of surplus materials, and there's a list that's been generated that can be shared with the board. But John Carr is the one who runs that auction, and no cost to us. It comes off of the 10% comes off of the from the seller's amount that they pay. So if you purchase something for $10, then he gets $1 from that sale.
Right. What
From
exactly
you.
is up for auction?
We have a variety of things up for auction. There's probably old technology that you have to auction. You can't throw it away. Probably some old material, some old desks, not material, old desks, old chairs, file cabinets, bookcases, things like that. But there is a list. Mr. Hurwitz, can you tell us when that list can be sent to the board?
I can send it tomorrow.
Thank you. Does it have a bunch of those old vehicles that I saw on the tour? We have a lot of old vehicles that we don't need anymore. All right, thank you. I look forward to seeing that. And then another question I have is about the update, the contract for recreation for the initial phase of the Welcome Stadium project. Could I get a little bit of a rundown of that, please? There are other board members who are on that committee. You guys are a little bit more plugged in because of the hands-on work that you do there on that committee. I would like some more information about that, please.
Skanska is the company that won the bid to basically be the owner's representative. And that's the role that they play. So they will oversee the architectural firm, they'll oversee the actual project work. And what's happened most recently is they did a walkthrough with the executive director of athletics and Chief Hurwitz and Mr. Rayford, and I believe Mr. Ogle, I think, was on that walkthrough. and they compared it to the UD analysis that was done right before COVID, whenever we were working with the University of Dayton on some kind of upgrade or potential changes in Welcome Stadium. They took that report from that company from 2019, went through and looked at what they felt were appropriate things to be done, immediate things that needed to be done, and then also went through and prioritized needs and wants. So for example, one of the wants would be having a weight room there for the public, for example. And they went through and they itemized those kinds of things that they saw in the report from the University of Dayton, and the things that Chief Hurwitz and the Executive Director of Athletics talked about were things that they had heard the community had talked about in the past. So that's the first role that they played. And then they met with the team members from the board that are part of the Welcome Stadium work, and reviewed that same list with them and got opinions and information from that team as well last Friday.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Board
I'm
member-
excited about
I'm
this
sorry.
project, sorry.
My apologies. Did you have another question, Board Member Reiner?
Nope, I'm done. Thank you, Vice President.
Board Member Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Dr. Lawley, I am a huge proponent of de-escalation. But my question is, after de-escalation on the 23rd and the 24th, then what? What supports will be in place for the staff, because we're going to teach them in a day, but the situations are still going to be very, very real? What supports will be in place for those staff members, administrators, after the training?
We actually met and talked about that as well, Mr. Sampson. So there's a menu of options that are short, 1 hour to potentially an hour and a half, that could be done like in a staff meeting or individually with people, that will be offered, so that the principals can pull those teams in to do that work. We have mediation teams coming, a mediation group that can do mediation, student conflict resolution. There are those kinds of things listed on a menu, and there are 2 different levels of those. I think there are 6 options on that particular grouping, and it depends on whether you're at level 1 or if you're escalated and you need a level 2 more intense type of training for that. So principals have that in their hands. And we have in-house and outside experts that'll be working with them on that. We've also worked with the Dayton Police Department to try and get a DARE or GREAT program back into the elementaries, to try and make sure that we're doing some things before students get to the point of joining a gang or involving themselves in gang activity. So that's also on the plate. And then we also have begun the planning sessions for introduction of the mega skills in the elementary beginning in the month of January. We're just now getting those materials through, coming through, so that that planning process can actually begin and be ready for January.
Thank you.
Okay, then Dr. Liley, I have a question on those same lines. What is the training looking like for those that are not having the verbal judo training?
They are receiving a pared-down version of what was already planned for Professional Development Day from the curriculum team. The curriculum team plans professional development and gets consultants lined up well in advance of those days. So it's just a pared-down version of what was happening there. So it's content literacy, it's classroom management, it's literacy, it's double teaching, classroom supports, math. Those are some of the main topics that were on there.
Okay, and to follow up with that, is there any ability in the future to move and allow some of our staff that are currently exhibiting some of these things, that are doing the double teaching, that are doing showing some of these things that they are currently doing, is there a way that we can almost have like a train the trainer or have our teachers and staff kind of lead some of those sessions with their peers?
We do that now. We have some of our curriculum staff lead some of these things. That's why you don't see a very extensive amount of consultants on here. You see people that are on here that we bring in because the expertise isn't fully developed with our staff, whether it's curriculum staff or teaching staff yet. And at some point in time, we do have teacher leaders present, we have teachers present, we have our curriculum team present, and the people that will, half the people that are presenting for the follow-up discipline work are our own employees, males of color, females of color personnel, who have very specific skills.
Okay, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Down this side, Dr. Pickett, you know I see you in your corner.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Board Member Sampson, Reiner?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
One last question. Dr. Lally, is it possible, because the 7 or 8 schools, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 schools that are doing the verbal judo, I understand that they are schools that are having some issues, and we're trying to equip the staff to be able to handle those. Is there a way to get the discipline data? Like, what makes these 12 schools these hot spots? Like the fights, the suspension rate, expulsion rate. Is there a way to get that data?
Yes, we do have that data. Some of the schools, though, actually ask for it, not because their data was high, but because they want to be prepared. So some of the elementaries mostly. But we do have the data for all of the schools, so we're happy to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
No problem, Mr. Sampson. The last question I did have, Dr. Lally, on consultants, it says BSN Sports Consultant Services. Can you share with the board kind of what that looks like?
The BSN, this is BSN Sports will be working with our physical education teachers on curriculum and then also some teaching strategies, just some highlights for them. A lot of times our physical education teachers don't have anything separate that's just based upon them. So this is one of those that will be just for them, working on their curriculum and working on specific strategies for physical education as opposed to listening to content reading strategies or things like that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I did have one further question around, as we move from our physical education teachers, I know we had some questions at the last board meeting around our music and art teachers. What are some of the supports that they're getting in their buildings, just our music and art teachers?
Music and art teachers have supports with the 2 fine arts coordinators. What they're actually indicating to us is that they're not receiving those supports that they feel that they need to have at the building level. So we're working on that, having conversations with those particular building leaders about the supports that the music and art people feel like they're lacking.
Okay, and with that, as a follow-up, is that, when we're saying the supports that they're not needing, is that from the fine arts coordinators or at the building level?
It's from the building level, discipline supports
Okay,
with students that are misbehaving.
thank you. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Witt-Gagne?
Thank you, Vice President Smith. Superintendent, I would be remiss if I felt like that we didn't address the fact that, our staff and everybody has worked tirelessly and people are a bit burnt out, as a lot of people in society are. And we are, being asked to consider that we dismiss these professional development classes and this education in a way so that our staff can be rejuvenated in a way. As we move forward, I know these things are planned, and as we get towards the end of the year, I definitely want our staff to know that we appreciate them. I certainly appreciate them, but I think that we are the 3rd poorest city in the state. Our students, our communities, you know, our students are in dire shape here. And the services that the school brings and that these teachers bring and that we bring to these kids are you know, sometimes all the services that they have. So while I know our teachers are being stretched and we're being asked to continue to give and give, I want people to know, I want our staff to know that I appreciate them and that, you know, let's just keep showing up and doing the work. And as the year progresses, hopefully we can find some space and other ways where we can make our teachers and our staff feel appreciated. I don't want them to feel as though because we're not giving them an additional 2 days off that I don't care about them, because I care deeply about the work that's being done here for our students. So I just want to consider as we move throughout the year that we find opportunities so that we can make sure that our staff recognizes their tremendous efforts, to include even our superintendent. So I appreciate you all.
Dr. Lally, if you could you kind of talk about the Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield that is on our contract list?
I would ask that you ask the treasurer for that information, as it's not in my, it's not in my department.
Okay. If who could really, my main thing on it is the wellness reimbursement portion. How much, or who would have the information on how much our employees take advantage of that? And then also, how much is it pushed out for them?
We actually had a conversation about that yesterday in our cabinet meeting, because when we reviewed this on the Friday agenda, I asked the question about where is our wellness committee and how many meetings have they had and what's been happening. And of course, with COVID, there wasn't much occurring to begin with, because we really weren't able to gather and do some of the things that used to occur, like the wellness walk, the wellness run, those sorts of things. So we talked about having the wellness committee restart and work through that. And Treasurer, can you answer how much the reimbursement is for like a doctor physical?
It is, we put up to $35,000, and Anthem will match that much.
So how much does the individual get?
It was $75 if they had their physical.
So you will see the wellness committee regenerated in the near future. And I need to say that only those people without a board action, only those people that actually take our insurance are eligible for the $75 for getting their physical. So anyone who doesn't take DPS insurance is not eligible for that part of the program.
Okay, I definitely think that I speak for myself and some others on the board that would love to see that wellness committee get back to moving. Are there any other questions from the board? If there are no further questions, Treasurer, may I have a vote, please?
Okay. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
5 yeses, 1 no.
Thank you, Treasurer. Superintendent, your recommendations?
First recommendation is DEA after July 10th.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Moved by Board Member Reinert and seconded by Board Member Witt Gagne. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, Treasurer, may I have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Reiner,
No.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
No.
Dr. Pickett,
No.
Dr. Harris.
No.
6 no.
Thank you. Superintendent, your next recommendation?
Next recommendation is a resolution for a district support staff salary scale change. This is a new position for the district, one that will be paid through Perkins funding, It is a CTE work-based learning specialist, and the salary is listed there as you see it. This person would help students be placed in work-based learning opportunities as well as transitioning them into the workforce.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for superintendent's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
And this time it was moved by Board Member Witt Gagne and seconded by Board Member Reiner. Dr. Lally, could you just go into more about what all this specialist would be doing?
This specialist works very closely with the CTE director, and today there are opportunities in our CTE programming by state law that allow students to have either virtual or actual hands-on work-based experience. So this person would help them find those work-based experiences and then monitor and track that for the students. So for example, if we can find someone who would hire one of our students in the office, there's an office, a law office, that student gets that work-based experience working and watching both the attorney as well as perhaps the attorney's assistant, a paralegal, all of those pieces and parts. So they actually get to count those work-based hours towards their CTE programming and their credit for that. So it's a little bit different than an internship because it's work-based and it's probably not as long as an internship depending on where they're placed, but it actually is an opportunity for them to see some real live work and to have that opportunity. Another option would be setting up virtual work-based experiences for students so that they can have an ongoing virtual work-based experience and see what it's like to actually be in a real job and a real experience. So this person monitors and manages all of that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lally. Are there any other questions? If there are no questions, Treasurer, may I have a vote, please?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Dr. Lally, your next recommendation, please.
Next recommendation is a recommendation for the board to pay the premium of 35 employees whose deductions were incorrect on their insurance. The total amount would not exceed $7,500. By way of explanation, since last year, there were 35 employees who were not charged correctly for the coverage, the insurance coverage that they received, and instead of doing a finding for recovery to the individual person, I'm requesting that the board pay that for them. Many of these people do not make more, they don't make enough money to have to pay $25 each paycheck towards insurance that was already covered a while ago. So I'm requesting that the board pay that mistake because it was our mistake. As a district, it was not the employee's mistake.
Do we have a motion for?
So moved.
Second.
It is moved by Board Member Reinert and seconded by Board Member Witt Gagne. Are there any other questions or comments on this recommendation?
I have questions, Vice President.
Yes.
How did this happen?
How does it
Superintendent?
happen?
Yes.
In their, whenever they signed up for their insurance, the deductions were not put into Business Plus appropriately.
Okay. Have we reviewed the process so that this would not happen again?
I believe that the process has been reviewed, and I believe that shared services, shared resources, the consulting group that you hired is reviewing that at both the treasurer's level and at the HR level.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can we get updated on ensuring that this does not happen again and making sure that, I just want, I would just like some follow-up to make sure that this mistake does not happen again. And I know you assured me. I do not want to short our employees by mistake again.
Understand?
Thank you.
My question is, with this, as you said, it would, instead of having that finding for discovery, would this action by the board alleviate us from having that on our audit at the year end?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? If there are no further questions, Treasurer, may I have a vote, please?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Your next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is approval of the CRA agreement with Delco District Properties. This involves a variety of properties in the Water Street area. Most importantly, right now, the garage, there's a parking garage that will go on the corner there, and as we all know, parking garages don't generate a lot of tax revenue. But what they've asked for is a CRA from the city on several different properties that they're renovating and renewing. There's a hotel that'll be there, several other properties. The CRA committee met with Woodard Development and went through all of that. This CRA agreement provides $5,000 for 15 years to us, for us to use at our discretion. And what we talked to them about was 3 of our CTE programs need for students to have driver's training. Our fire program, our police criminal justice program, and our automotive program. And oftentimes, like right now, there are 12 students that cannot afford to pay for their own training for driver's ed. So this grant initially will be used for that each year that it comes online from the CRA agreement. It'll be used to pay for those the CTE students who need to have that driver's training for their CTE pathway. And once that's done, the CRA agreement allows the district to decide what to do with that money for the 15 years.
Thank you, Dr. Lally. Do we, excuse me, do we have a motion for Dr. Lally's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Board Member Witt Gagne, seconded by Dr. Harris. Are there any questions on the recommendation? I do have a question, Dr. Lally. I know that we talked about right now with helping out those students in need for those licensures and things there. How can we then set up as a board and as a district to make sure when we do have some of these CRAs that that ask is constantly being shaped and moved to fit where we're going in as a direction as a district?
I think that will fall into the area for the superintendent and the curriculum team to make sure that it's being spent appropriately. We know that this will not come online for probably 2 years, and then once it does, it's earmarked right now. But there are some others that are also in the same way. They're earmarked specifically for science fair. They're earmarked specifically for music. This one is the only one that is open-ended after that need may not be there. If we continue to offer those 3 programs, I'm not sure that we won't always have that need. But the availability is there. So the curriculum team at that point in time and the superintendent will have to make sure that if the need changes, that they change what they pay for.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, I would ask that the board be updated regularly about those, even if it's a quarterly, yearly, about just making sure to keep a close eye to make sure that partners are following through on their end of these things.
The treasurer has someone in her department that invoices when they've come online. And I believe right now we have 2 that are online from the CRAs that have happened already. And he would be responsible for, or that person in that treasurer's office is responsible for invoicing and reminding them that the CRAs are due.
Yeah, that's
Treasurer?
what he's doing right now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? If there are no other questions or comments, Treasurer, may I have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Superintendent Lally, your next recommendation?
Recommend approval of the following settlement agreement. This is a private settlement agreement. The board has information in the executive content regarding a student.
Thank you, Dr. Lally. Do we have a motion for this recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
It was moved by Board Member Sampson, seconded by Board Member Spencer Reinert. If If there are any other questions or comments, I see none. Treasurer, may we have a vote, please?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Does that conclude your recommendations, Dr. Holly?
It does conclude my recommendations for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Treasurer, your recommendations, please.
Okay. I have a presentation first, and presentation for 5-year forecast. After that, you have a 5-year forecast with the assumptions to be approved. Okay, we'll go, Sharice. Okay, we have okay 5-year forecast. This forecast is for November 2021. All school districts in Ohio, they are required to file a 5-year forecast for general fund in November 30th and May 31st. The 5-year forecast includes 3 years actual and 5 years projected revenues and expenditures. Fiscal year 22, which is July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022, is the first year of the 5-year forecast and considered the baseline of the year. Our forecast is being updated to reflect the most current economic data available to us as of November 2021. Okay. This one is estimated general fund revenues. What it shows us, this one is where do we get our revenues? As you can see, 61% or 61.1% is from the state foundation. 3.5% is from other state, which is homestead rollbacks. 29.2% is real estate taxes, and 4.5% tangible personal properties, and 2.7% is other miscellaneous stuff like interest and others. So as you can see from this pie chart, we are heavily dependent on the state foundation, which is 4.6% of the district's revenue comes from the state. Because of that, understanding the changes of state budget and funding formula is critical to us. We have 2 unknown state biennium budgets in this forecast, which poses major risk if this, the state formula changes in a way that impacts our district. Next, please. This one is to show the public our local revenues and versus state revenues. As you can see, our local revenue is very small compared to our state. And you will see the actuals are high and the projected are lower. If you see the yellow, the state foundation, this is due to House Bill 110 because we used to get all the revenues through us, and we used to pass it to the charters and vouchers. That's the reason why you see a lower State Foundation. Next, please. Okay, the next one is we're showing operating expenditures estimated for fiscal year 2022. This one shows us where do we spend our money. As you can see, 52% of our money goes to wages, 20% of the money goes to benefits, 18% to purchased services, 4% materials and supplies, 4% capital, and 1% others. So you will see in here, our purchased services used to show very high in the previous years, but now lower. It's due to the House Bill 110, instead of passing through us the money for the charters and vouchers. Now it follows the child. It goes directly to the to charters and other organizations. This chart, next please. This chart is trying to show all the expenditures, the 3 years actual and the 5 years projected. So as you can see, in 2020, our expenditure was much higher, and it went lower. At that time, because all the expenses we were putting it, since our expenditures were so much, we had to move some of the expenses from general fund to wellness program and the ESSERS, which is 507 fund. That lowered it. But you will see the projected amount is lower. It is not because our expenses are lower right now. It is because those charters and vouchers are not passing through us. So that's the reason why it's lower. You see for the estimated for the next 5 years. Next chart, please.
Treasurer, if I may interrupt really quickly. I noticed on the last screen, so I'm following along on my computer, and the slides that I see have numbers, and I just realized that there aren't numbers on the screens out there. It's really important for fiscal transparency and accountability. I think all the pie charts so far haven't had the labels, they've had the charts. I want to make sure that the public sees the numbers. I'm going to say, if anybody's following along, the document will be found on board docs and you can see it. Feel free to send the district an email and we can send it to you as well. And let's make sure that this doesn't happen again, please. I want to make sure that people following along can see the numbers. The charts are important, but without numbers, they are not as helpful. Thank you. My apologies for interrupting, Vice President.
Which numbers are you talking?
So if you look at the pie chart, it doesn't have the numbers on the chart. On the x-axis or the y-axis, if you go back to the pie chart, it has the pie chart, but it doesn't have wages 52%, benefits 20%, purchase services.
Oh, it doesn't?
No. And my apologies that I did not catch that sooner to the public. I was looking on my laptop and I did not look at the screen.
Okay. We will put the pie chart, the charts with the numbers now, after we finish.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next, please. Okay, this chart shows, it is really a snapshot of the detailed forecast and assumptions. It's going to be approved, but this one shows the revenues, the beginning balance, revenues and expenditures, encumbrances, and at the bottom, unreserved fund balance. So if you see our revenues, the actual revenues from 2019 to 2021, and the actual expenditures from 2019 to 2021, we were operating within, in 2019, our revenue was 288.5 million. Our expenditures was 252.4 million. So we were operating within our revenue. But in 2020, our revenues were 272 compared to our expenditure 279. So we were operating on, we were spending more than we were bringing. But when we saw that, we moved some expenditures from general fund to other funds. So in 2021, our revenue and our expenditures, so we were operating within our, what we get. So we had 419,815 surplus. But in 2022 to 2023 to 2025, our expenditures are higher than what our revenues. That is not good. So at the bottom, if you see, at the bottom of this, unreserved fund balance, June 30th of each year, we are in a positive, but in 2024, since we don't have money, what I did in here is the policy, the board has a policy, 5% policy. That 5% policy reserve, I cannot reserve because we don't have money. So I put a zero reserve in 2024 and came within 1 million. So we get out from that deficit. But in 2025 and 2026, we are going to be in a deficit unless the formula changes. Next slide, please. Okay, this shows our revenues, expenditures, and ending balance. As you can see, the revenue is indicated with the blue, and expenditures with red, and green is our ending. Cash balance is positive through 2024. The fund balance reserve policy is funded through 2023. That's what I noted before. So the reserve, the 5% reserve, we don't have after that. Next slide, please. Okay. Wow, this one is, again, it doesn't have a number. We'll put a number on that. Okay, and this one is ending cash balance in true cash days. This one, what it is if we don't get any revenues coming in with what we have, how many days can we sustain? So on this one, the 3 years actual, we've been doing great, but for this year too, for 2022, we estimate 152 days we can go without any revenues coming in. In 2023, 89 days, but in 2024, only 11 days. After that, we don't have, so we cannot sustain even a single day. Next, please. Okay, this one is what general fund concerns. What we have is HB 110, Fair School Funding Plan, made many changes to the state funding payments and expenditures, which is charter, voucher, open enrollment. Thus follows the kid, no longer passing through us. The Student Wellness Fund guaranteed as part of the funding amount instead of separate revenues. Now it's within the calculation and it has to be posted in our general fund. ESSER 2, ESSER 3 funds are likely the largest source of new money for our district over the next 3 years. That is really good. It's helping us. A strategic use of ESSER funds can help us, our general fund, sustain. New state budget, HB 110, not providing substantial net new money to our district. Future funding is uncertain still for 2024 to 2026, as fair funding plan not funded beyond fiscal year 2023. Other proposals like college credit plus excess costs and tuition are expected to increase our costs going forward. Must continue to review costs and adjust budget because we are still projected to spend more than we receive long term. Next. This five-year forecast shows DPS began to use reserves in 2022 and that our district faces financial stress in 2024. With current unknowns to our state funding, we will continue monitoring and communicating changes as they become available to us. Do you have any questions?
First, I want to say thank you, Treasurer, Madam Treasurer, for that presentation. And as I was following, I think it's just a formatting, because on our end, even some of the backgrounds is different from there. So we'll make sure that in the future that formatting is consistent. But I do want to thank you for that input, and I want to lift up just for the board the necessity for us to be fiscally responsible. Looking at these, especially the parts around us not knowing some of those unknowns, those things that come from the state. We know that the state has thrown a lot of different curveballs at us. We've seen how school funding has gone over, not since we've been here, but for years and years before. Some of the legislation around charter school funding and things like that. So definitely understanding some of the hills that we have to go up as a board. So just wanted to put that out there. Are there any other questions or comments to Madam Treasurer?
I have some questions, please, Vice President.
Yes.
So I kind of want to piggyback on something you just said. And, thinking about legislation and how it's never perfect. And, what one bill might have some really good things and it will also have some really devastating things to it. House Bill 110 was one of those. We celebrated the fact that we had a fair school funding formula finally put in place after 27 years. But the stark number of state dollars that no longer come to DPS was laid evident in this report today. It's really frustrating to see how much has automatically changed, which leads me to my second question, Treasurer. So looking at the 5-year forecast, off the top of your head, I'm looking at slide number 3 with the pie chart for the general fund estimated revenues fiscal year '22. 64.6% of the district's revenue comes from state sources. And that's with the new funding formula.
Yes.
Where the charter dollars no longer come into DPS. Prior to that, what was the percentage of the district's revenue from state sources?
It
Do you
was
know?
71,
71.
yes. But right now, what happens is the wellness program is in the calculation too.
Yes.
So, and the other funding goes to follows the student. Plus, what I see is, what happened? I forgot. Yeah, our tax revenue. Our tax revenue got increased a little bit. That is the reason why you see much lower than last year.
Right.
Because when you compare it, the tax revenue we got and compared to what the state funding is lower now.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Vice President.
Any other questions or comments? If I may, Dr. Lally, could we have Ms. Kincaid also put a link to our board docs on our Facebook page as well, for those that want to follow and see some of those charts and graphs?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Lally.
Do you know what happened? I PDF'd it instead of putting the PowerPoint. I put a PDF. I think that when I put the PDF, it took the numbers. So maybe we'll put the PowerPoint instead of the PDF.
I appreciate you, and we'll make sure we get it all sorted out. Thank you,
Yeah.
Madam Treasurer. Next, can you go to your next recommendation then, please?
Sure. Okay. The next one is the 5-year forecast with the assumption. This is a very detailed statement, and you can read it. I don't have to go because it's detailed. I just want your approval. I recommend approval of the 5-year forecast and assumption.
So
Thank-
moved.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Board Member Spencer Reinert, and it was seconded by Board Member William Harris. Any questions or comments? If there are none, Treasurer, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
Your next recommendation, Madam Treasurer.
6 yeses. Okay. The next one is Certificate of Estimated Resources. This one, we are amending it because number one, we're moving the wellness funds. We were thinking before we will get it in Fund 467. Now, since we cannot, no longer in Fund 467, it is in general fund. So what we estimated, we are removing that one. The other adjustment we put in is, updating is Fund 003, permanent improvement. We applied for the loan money and for the 10 million, and we received it. So we are putting the 10 million on this one, and we are reimbursing general fund for the advance before we advance it, before we get this one. Another one, and this we are adjusting is, we are adding $5,000 in Fund 14 because revenue is being collected, so we are adding the revenue on that one. That's all the adjustments I have for amended certificate. May I have your approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seconded by Board Member Sampson. If not, Treasurer, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Your next recommendation, please.
Okay. Next one is, we are amending the appropriation or budget. What it is, we're increasing the budget in Fund 03, which is our capital improvement because of that loan. And we are decreasing the wellness program because we are moving it to general fund. And we are decreasing general fund. Okay, yeah, those are the only ones I have on the adjustment portion.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Sampson and seconded by Board Member Wick Gagne. Are there any questions or comments? If not, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Your next recommendation, please.
Okay. This is permanent transfer. We are transferring from general fund to capital project fund 03, 796,100. This is to pay the debt. We borrowing the 10 million. We have to pay all twice a year. So since we cannot pay from general fund, it has to be paid from capital project fund. So we asking you to approve us for that transfer.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Board Member Sampson and seconded by Board Member Reinert. Any questions or comments? If not, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Your next recommendation?
This one is advance. This is a repayment of the advances we had from Fund 003, Permanent Improvement, to General Fund. We advanced a while ago 3.5 million, and now since we got that money from, borrowed that money, and we are repaying General Fund. May I have your
So moved.
approval?
Second.
Moved by myself and seconded by Board Member Sampson. Are there any questions? Now, just one question, Madam Treasurer, for clarification. This is the money that went into some of the improvement work, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany?
Yes.
Dr. Pickett?
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Your next recommendation, please.
Okay. Oh, this is monthly financial report for October. Our monthly financial report, the Finance Committee met yesterday, and it was reviewed by the Finance Committee, and they didn't have any questions at that time. And if you want me to go through it, we can. If not, it was reviewed by the Finance Committee.
Do we have a motion to approve the report?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll take the second on that.
Who was that, Ms. Wignanier down there? That was Dr. Pickett down in the corner. So it was motion by Dr. Pickett and seconded by Board Member Spencer Reinert. Board Member, do we have any other deeper questions for the treasurer around the monthly financials? We appreciate the work, you and the Finance Committee. If there are no other questions, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes?
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Your next recommendation, please.
Okay, the next one is, okay, in accordance with section 3317.8 of the Ohio Revised Code, the following tuition rates have been calculated from the State of Ohio Department of Education. For out of district, 3,290 and 17 cents, and out of state for grades K-12, 11,894.55. May I have a motion? May I have your approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Board, do we have any questions around this recommendation? I have one. Could you give me the difference between these out-of-district tuition and out-of-state tuition versus what we would get from a district where they have outer-district enrollment, open enrollment?
Oh, out of a district, what do you mean?
So we understand now that we are an open enrollment district, that there is a money that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lally, that money from an open enrollment district comes directly from that district, correct?
Yes, we pay, if the students are in here with us, it is 6,100 we
Okay.
get. If this is charged out of district, it's only 3,290 and
Okay.
17 cents. So it's a big difference.
Okay, and then, Dr. Lally, if you could, which kind of students typically would pay this kind of tuition?
The only students that would pay the out-of-district tuition now are those students that are in a military-type district. Fairborn and Mad River are the closest ones to us, and they do not pay for out-of-district open enrollment. So any student that would come to Dayton Public Schools, for example, to Stivers, to Ponance, to Meadowdale, CTC, to any of our elementaries, middle schools, from those two districts, we would not receive that open enrollment money from them because they are a military impact aid is what it's called, an impact aid school district. So those parents would have to pay the $3,290.17 to us in tuition. Any other school district that is not impact aid, which the rest of the school districts around us and many in the state would pay the $6,000 open enrollment. I believe the treasurer said $6,100.
Yeah.
They would pay that instead of the $3,290 out of the parents' pocket. The district
The
would pay
district pays that,
the
correct?
$6,100,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Lally. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Your next recommendation, please.
Okay, I have official minutes for October. I recommend approval of the official minutes for October
So moved.
2021.
Second.
Moved by myself and seconded by Board Member Sampson. I see no questions. May we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Your next line item, Madam Treasurer?
Okay. I recommend the approval of the donations for November 16, 2021. We have 2 items on this one. After you approve, I will send them a thank you letter
Thank you. So
to the
moved.
donors.
Second.
Moved by myself, seconded by Dr. Pickett. We do want to thank you. We have some Grand Canyon University for $800 in North Dayton Baptist Church for our English learners, language learners. 10 $40 gift cards for a $400 donation. Everything that comes in is greatly appreciated, so definitely we appreciate that. Are there any other comments or questions?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Dr. Lawley, can you give me an idea of, I see that Grand Canyon University wants to do student incentives. Do we have an idea of what those incentives would look like yet?
I do not. Does any of my cabinet members that are here, you have an idea of what those are?
Okay, thank you.
To then follow up with that, is that then open for whatever incentive program we kind of have in it? I kind of think back to the campaigns that we had towards the end of last year. Would that then be there? Well, I guess it's student incentives at Mountain Street directly. So whatever then comes out of whatever Mountain Street kind of incentive, it will go into something there? Appreciate that, Dr. Lawley. Any other questions or concerns, comments? If not, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Your next recommendation, please.
We have several purchase requisitions, and I recommend the approval of the purchase requisitions as
So-
listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by myself and seconded by Board Member Sampson. Are there any questions on our purchase requisitions? Board Member Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. ALC Schools LLC, can someone explain to me what that is, please?
This is special transportation for students with IEPs who need to go to different locations. So instead of sending a bus to Cincinnati, we hire a car. Instead of Columbus, we hire a car. So that's what these services are for the school year. You can see it's through October through June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Lawley.
Dr. Lally, if someone could give the board some information around the change order for the drop-off area at Kaiser, please.
I'll ask Chief Hurwitz to come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. So originally, with the asphalt project, we had considered this work. We did not get it done, to be honest. It was something that I missed. So looking at Kaiser right now, we have to get this work done. There are some ruts and things in the dirt base in the back. We need to try to get this done before winter, hence my request for you to approve this work so we can get it taken care of.
Are there any other questions for Chief Hurwitz? Mr. Sampson.
I'm sure he can answer this question. The district brine and emergency snow removal.
Sure. So There was actually a request for a change on this. This will be a district brine contract. It will not be emergency snow removal because we did not receive any bids for it. The cost was actually reduced down to 82. This is a preventative maintenance treatment. We will come in, like when you see the cities come out and you see all the liquid brine that's being put on the streets. This will enable our staff to respond quicker. This will enable us to take care of our properties better. This will take care of 10 treatments to all of our sites district-wide. So from schools to any administrative areas, it's a 10 application process. Go right ahead.
To follow up, so this should be 82,000 versus 150,000?
Correct.
Thank you.
If I may ask a follow-up question? So we didn't get any bids for the emergency snow removal.
Correct.
What are we going to be doing when it snows and we need some emergency snow removal?
So we're going to call in our staff.
Okay.
And currently, we're going to rely on some of our operations department, our logistics team. We've coordinated with, they will be assisting us as well since they have licensing and ability CDLs to drive some of our trucks.
Right.
So we will be working within our own teams.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
One more follow-up to Board Member Reiners. Are we still, is it too late to get bids? Has that closed, or will we be looking for?
So it has closed. We could
Okay.
put it back out, but at this point, it's going to take us a while to get it back and then come back to board in December. I think we're sort of where we're going to be for the winter.
Good.
But I think the brining, it will help. I mean, it's going to give us an advantage that we've never had before.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Chief Hurwitz? Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for anything else on purchase requisitions? If there are no other questions, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you, and can we make sure that the updated board docs reflect that change for that purchase requisition? Treasurer, your last recommendation, please.
I recommend the approval of the following then and now.
So
So-
move.
I will second that, Board Member Sampson.
My apologies, sir.
You're good. Can you go into this then and now for us, please, Madam Treasurer?
Dr. Lally, can you?
The
Address this one.
purchase order that was put in place for this particular purchase was closed before the district received the invoice for this purchase of laptops and docking stations and additional technology. So because the purchase order was closed, even though the money was on the purchase order was closed, so it became a then and now because the invoice showed that there was no purchase order open at that point when they received the invoice.
Thank you, Dr. Lally. Are there any other questions? If there are no further questions, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses. That concludes my recommendation for tonight.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. As we move on to new business, we have board member travel and expense. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It was moved and seconded by board member,
Sampson.
oh, I forgot your name that quick. Board member Sampson and seconded by board member Spencer Reinhardt. I would like if, during our new business, if those who were able to travel would be able to speak a little bit about that. It's always good to share some of the things that we learn in these opportunities. Are there any other questions or anything about our board member travel and expense? If not, may we have a vote?
Okay. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris?
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Next, we have a resolution, and I need to get a sip of water, because this is quite lengthy. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce it at all?
I shall introduce it as a resolution denouncing the State Board of Education's repeal of resolution condemning racism and advancing equity and opportunity for Black students, Indigenous students, and students of color. Take it away.
Thank you, Vice President Smith, and I had a good conversation with our president about this, and so I have watched other districts do this, and so I asked to introduce this today, and I'm proud to read it off. It is 3 pages, so bear with me. It is a resolution denouncing State Board of Education's repeal of resolution condemning racism and advancing equity and opportunity for Black students, Indigenous students, and students of color. Whereas on July 14th, 2020, the State Board of Education of Ohio adopted the resolution to condemn racism and advance equity and opportunity for Black students, Indigenous students, and students of color. And whereas the July 14th, 2020 resolution passed in the wake of George Floyd's murder called for equity and opportunity for students of color and acknowledged the lack of equity in public schools for Black, Indigenous, and people of color students in Ohio, stating in part, whereas separate but equal is no longer the law of the land, but systemic inequity in education has relegated millions of children of color to under-resourced, struggling schools, and whereas significant gaps between the performance of Black students compared to their white peers exist even in generously resourced schools, and whereas the State Board of Education believes that public schools are fundamental to our democratic society and that we must be dedicated to equity and thoughtful teaching of future citizens where racism, bigotry, and hatred have no place. And whereas the path to equity begins with a deep understanding of the history of inequalities and inhumanity and how they have come to impact current society, therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education condemns in the strongest possible terms white supremacy, hate speech, hate crimes, and violence in the service of hatred. These immoral ideologies and actions deserve no place in our country, state, and school system. And be it further resolved that the starting point of our work in racial equity must be reflection and internal examination, whereby the board will look for ways to encourage our members in open and courageous conversations on racism, inequity, and white privilege. And be it further resolved that the State Board of Education shall offer training to members to identify our own implicit biases so that we can perform our duties to the citizens of Ohio without unconscious racism. Whereas on October 13th, 2021, in a 10-7 vote, the State Board of Education of Ohio voted to repeal the July 14th, 2020 resolution. And whereas the board passed a new resolution entitled Resolution to Promote Academic Excellence in K-12 Education for each Ohio student without prejudice or respect to race, ethnicity, or creed, stating that there is not only a growing national divide, but a troubling focus on the color of one's skin rather than on the content of one's character. And whereas the new resolution also condemns any standards, curriculum, or training programs for students, teachers, or staff that seek to divide or ascribe circumstances or qualities such as collective guilt, moral deficiency, or racial bias to a whole race or group of people. And whereas the board, in repealing the July 14th, 2020 resolution and passing the new resolution, minimizes and disregards the very inequities it detailed on its July 14th, 2020 resolution. And whereas the Board of Education of Dayton Public School District is and was in support of the July 14th, 2020 State Board of Education resolution and strongly opposes its repeal. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District that Section 1, the board denounces the State Board of Education's repeal of resolution condemning racism and advancing equity and opportunity for Black students, Indigenous students, and students of color. Section 2, the treasurer is authorized to deliver or cause to be delivered a certified copy of this resolution to community leaders, to members of the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Senate, to the State Board of Education of Ohio, and to the office of Governor Mike DeWine. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and immediately after its adoption and shall supersede any prior resolution or act of this board, which may be inconsistent or duplicative with the provisions of this resolution. In Section 4, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning and relating to its passage of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this board, and that all deliberations of this board and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.122 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Board Member Witt Gagne and second by Board Member Pickett. Is there any questions or discussion about the resolution? If there is none, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. We will stay with you, Board Member Spencer Reinhardt. I know we have some first and second readings, am I correct?
We do.
Thank you.
This is a resolution to adopt board policy, second reading. The rationale, inasmuch as the Board of Education is committed to the continual updating of its policies, rules, and regulations manual, and the committee which was appointed has been working toward that goal, the following is brought at this time for second reading in compliance with board file. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, hereby accepts and adopts the following policies that have been codified for inclusion in the Handbook of Policies, Rules, and Regulations. File DECA, Administration of Federal Grant Funds, revised to align with changes in legislation. File EEA, Student Transportation Services, revised to align with changes in legislation. File GBK, Tobacco Use on District Property by Staff Members, revised to align with changes in legislation. File GBQ, Criminal Records Check, revised to align with changes in legislation. File GCD, Professional Staff Hiring, revised to align with changes in legislation. File GDC/GDCA/GDD, Support Staff Recruiting /Posting of Vacancies/Hiring, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGAE, Health Education, revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGAG, Drugs, Alcohol, and Tobacco Education, it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGBE, Remedial Instruction, parentheses, Intervention Services, revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGBEA, Reading Skills Assessments and Intervention, parentheses, third grade reading guarantee, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGBEA-R, Reading Skills Assessment and Intervention, parentheses, third grade reading guarantee regulation, revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGCH-R, also LEC-R, and it's College Credit Plus regulation, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File JHCB, Immunizations, revised to align with changes in legislation. File JHCC, Communicable Diseases, revised to align with changes in legislation. File LEC-R, parentheses, also IGCH-R, College Credit Plus regulation, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to
So
accept
moved.
these policies?
So moved.
It's been moved by Board Member Sampson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Harris. Are there any questions, comments, concerns from the board? If there are not, may we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Your policy first readings, please.
Okay, these are first readings that we discussed in Policy Committee today. Resolution to adopt board policy, first reading. The rationale is inasmuch as the Board of Education is committed to the continued updating of its policies, rules, and regulations manual, and the committee which was appointed has been working toward that goal, the following are brought at this time for first reading in compliance with Board File BFC policy adoption. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, hereby accepts and adopts the following policies that have been codified for inclusion in the Handbook of Policies, Rules, and Regulations. File DJF-R, Purchasing Procedures, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File GDBE, Support Staff Vacation and Holidays, revised to align with changes in legislation. File IGAH, IGAI, Family Life Education / Sex Education. It's revised to align with changes in legislation. File IICC, School Volunteers, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File IKF, Graduation Requirements, and it's revised to align with changes in legislation. File JEC, School Admission, revised to align with changes in legislation. File JP, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, parentheses, Restraint and Seclusion, revised to align with changes in legislation. These policies are being read for the first time. As such, a motion or second is not required. These policies will be available in the superintendent's office for review and comment prior to their second reading and adoption by the Board of Education. Furthermore, the policies will be reviewed by the superintendent's office, the board's office, and the legal department of the Dayton Public Schools prior to the second reading. Now, if I may quickly, I want to make a couple comments. The first, there are two policies that I'd like to comment on. The first is something that we actually discussed last month. There's a file, Family Life Education / Sex Education, that we discussed at policy and we were not happy about. It was pulled last month. It is a required policy. It is legally required. It is up for first reading, and I am still in conversations with other board members. I think that there's some good conversations that we can have about the ways that we can support our students that will best serve them. And the second is something we talked about earlier in the meeting, and is positive behavioral interventions and supports with restraint and seclusion, which is related to the de-escalation training that we're providing for teachers next month. And I wanted to kind of go over that. It's a really, really important policy that we have on the books. It's a little bit long. I'm not going to read it. Don't worry. You guys are hearing enough from me today. But this is really a policy that is drafted with, the title sounds scary because we're talking about restraint and seclusion, but the policy is centered around what is best for children. The focus and the first consideration throughout the entire policy is what is best for students. We are doing this not to give teachers the ability to do something, but to protect the students in ways that will help them succeed and de-escalate. And this policy goes hand in hand with de-escalation training that was asked for by many of the principals. I just wanted to point out the general rules for restraint and seclusion is the district does not engage in practices prohibited by state law, including, and there's a list of 10 things, explicitly mentioned in there is seclusion in the locked room or area. We do not do that. We will not do that. I just wanted to dispel any myths that might come about from the title of this policy. Restraint may only be used in a small certain number of cases if there are people's safety that is in danger. You know, these steps that are codified and that we are training our teachers on are as a last resort to provide an opportunity for students to regain control of their actions. There's a lot that goes in here, and it is focused again on what is best for students. It is written explicitly for what is best for students. And that is all that I have for policy. That is the first reading, Vice President.
Thank you very much. New business.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly go over the monthly financial report that we had yesterday. Having this on the heels of the 5-year forecast is really helpful and informative. We get a snapshot every single month and we compare it to the financials from the year before. But that's exactly what it is, and it's really helpful to put it in the context, which we do twice a year, of the 5-year forecast. Everything looks good as of now. Our property taxes are on track to where they should be. Everything looks a little bit wonky compared to last year because last year was wonky in a lot of ways. Wonky is a technical term, I'll let you guys know. We are looking at reductions in general fund revenues because of House Bill 110. There's a pretty stark difference in where the amount of money that has come in previous years and where it is now. But everything looks good. We have no concerns, and we had some good conversations about the funding. I will point out that it's good to see that with the end of the pass-through with the charter school money, previously we had a very large percentage of money that was total purchase services, which was part of the pass-through. We get a much more accurate view of our spending since the pass-through money no longer passes through. And our general fund spending right now, 68% of our general fund goes to total salaries and benefits. That is my monthly financial committee report. Board member Pickett took my place at the Parent Family Community Council this month. My son had a orchestra concert that I didn't want to miss. While I prioritized my board work, I really wanted to go see him play. So I cannot give a report on that. I had some really great experiences at the OSBA conference this last week. It was really informative. I wish I could do it again next weekend. There were some really great sessions that I went to on board leadership as well as equity, but I would like to give a shout out to our district who presented. Our superintendent was unfortunately not able to be there, but I was really privileged to be able to watch our Business Advisory Council. We had board member Whit Gagne there, and we gave a good presentation on the CTE high schools that we have and the partnership between the Business Advisory Council that we have and the good work that we do. And I would like to thank our business community for the support. They recognize how important DPS is and they support us, and I'm very, very grateful for the work that they do. And beyond that, I would just like to thank the board for considering the resolution in support of acknowledging the system that we live in, especially after the equity presentation we had. I'm grateful that the board voted in favor of that. And that's all I have, Vice President.
Thank you, Board Member Spencer Reinert. With that, can we go over to Dr. Gabriella Pickett? You have any new business, Dr. Pickett?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. October 21st, I met with the ESL committee, and at this point, we're going to be reevaluating the practices to ensure that we have compliance with the Ohio ELP standards. That's as far as the ESL committee. Also, with the help of Dr. Lally and Ms. Dooley, we took 50 students, Hispanic students, to Wright State University, and they actually got to visit several other colleges. They had lunch, they had breakfast, they had a lot of fun, and I hope that it was good for them. That's all, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Board Member Dr. Gabriella Pickett. We will move on to Board Member Deion Sampson. Do you have any new business, sir?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have no new business for you.
Any other comments or anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you, Board Member Sampson. Let's move over to Dr. Harris. Any new business, sir?
Thank you, Vice President Smith. Just want to say again, what an honor and privilege it is to serve on this board and serve this district as my time is coming swiftly to a close. I'm grateful for the opportunities that have been presented to me. And again, I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Board Member Reiner, and I was able to attend the presentation of my colleague here, Karen Whit Gagne, and Dr. Michelle Rammel, and also Aaron Dooley. They represented the district just in an outstanding way, and I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about CTE. Do want to say a special congratulations. I know it may not be appropriate in light of what we just did, but want to congratulate Mrs. Charlotte McGuire, who is now voted in as the new president of the Ohio State School Board. She is a friend of our district and our community, and I know that she will lead this district well. She will lead the state with integrity and with honesty. She loves children, so we support her and are grateful for her. And certainly to all of our district personnel, teachers, superintendent, we know that you are under some personal issues, and we're praying for you and your family and praying for the success of our district. And again, we certainly want to let this community know that we love our teachers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Board Member Whit Gagne, is there any new business, ma'am?
Well, everybody's already put my business out there. Just kidding. No, From the athletics perspective, I mean, it was a pleasure to meet with our stakeholders last week as we start to explore the opportunities that exist at Welcome Stadium. It's just so exciting for the district, what the potential that we have for our kids and community. So really working hard to make sure that all of the areas that as we're reviewing the scope of the project, that the funds that we will be spending are spent wisely, and that we're doing a project that has the integrity that our kids and community deserve. So that's really exciting work. I'm looking forward to that. You know, as far as the presentation at the OSBA Capital Conference, I really felt like I just held the banner for Chief Dooley, who attended on behalf of Superintendent Lally and Dr. Michelle Rammel, who continue to do just phenomenal work in identifying the what our kids need and what the information that we're bringing back from the business community, what they need. And one of the most meaningful things that I learned at the conference, not this year, but you know, the first conference I went to was one of those motivational speakers that spoke about, you know, leaders create culture, culture drives behavior, and behavior produces success. And when I think about what leadership means, and I look at Dr. Rammel and Chief Dooley and Superintendent Lally and their capacity to just show up and do the work. Leaders just really show up and do the work and keep doing the work. And then, you know, hopefully that showing up and doing the work creates a behavior of a community around you that wants to continue to do the work, and then that behavior produces success. So I'm just going to keep doing what I can do to show up and be the leader that I can be in the community, and I appreciate the opportunity. So that's all I have. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Board Member Witt Gagne. Dr. Lally, do you have anything to share?
I've shared most of what I would have updated the board on earlier in kind of doing the combination review and answering questions tonight, but thank you very much. And I would wish a blessed Thanksgiving to everyone in our community and to all of our staff members next week.
Thank you. I would want to start, and I hate doing it, but on a sad note, just want to wish our sincere condolences and thoughts and prayers are with the friends and family of Dr. James Williams, who was a former superintendent here. Superintendent Williams was my superintendent. He was the superintendent from, I think, my first, second grade year all the way up to about 10th grade. So he was really around the educational founding of my life and what I got here in Dayton Public Schools. I know a lot of people still in the district were around when Dr. Williams was here, people in the community. So those that knew him and those that worked with him, our thoughts and prayers are with you as well as with his family. I did also go to the OSBA conference, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Being involved, going to the Black Caucus, there was a great presentation given by Coach Ted Ginn up in Cleveland, from Cleveland, Glenville, spoke about a lot of the work that he's done up there in Cleveland and just really hammered home some of the things that we're doing around our Males of Color program and now our Females of Color program. And somebody had asked him a question, you know, he had started a boys' academy. And they said, well, where is there work for young ladies? And he said, that's one of the biggest, you know, things I wished I would have started, is to include that. And seeing how we as a district are seeing some of that with our mentorship programs and adding some of those things in and being able to have conversations and say, hey, this is something we're trying to move forward in our district, and seeing some of the courses that were given and people that were speaking, and it's always great to be around people that do this work. But when you're there, you also understand everybody's coming from different perspectives. You might be at a table with someone who's from a district with 2 buildings and 120 kids. So it's just seeing those differences and seeing how people are working together. And like Board Member Reiner said, there's some things that we definitely want to bring back as far as making sure we can do some trainings here and things that we can help not only us as a board, but as a district and our community as well. New business, moving into that. We do have an athletic advisory council meeting on tomorrow. So I am excited to see what comes out of that. I always love meeting with those folk. Speaking on, and Board Member Whit Gagne shared it, the meeting with folk from Skanska was just great. It was a great first step for us to see really something that we see as something being transformative, not just in an athletic sense, but some of the conversations we were having about just how does this help our community, period? How does this help the city of Dayton? How does this help our parents? How does this help those that do not play a sport at all? And so finding the ways that we can do something beautiful and long-lasting and uplifting for our district. Lastly, I do want to wish a happy Thanksgiving for our families. Safe time. There's been a lot that goes on in our community. So please be safe. Please do not forget that people get sick right now, so be vigilant on all of these things. We're not totally out of the woods, and that is a huge thing. That's why we have these things still on. So I appreciate everyone that came to speak. I think that is a huge part, being able to voice your concerns. I do ask that some of those that spoke on some things, that we make sure that we connect with some of those people that spoke, and get to those things that we need to get to on that level. And that is all. As always, love each other, love yourselves, look out for each other, because that's how we're gonna get to where we need to get. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I don't think we have any questions on the motion. May we have a vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Whit Gagne,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned. Good night and have a safe travel home.